Hey kids, welcome to lesson 11, traversal practice. Kids, before we get too much into this, please listen to me when I say don't overthink this. We've already done this. This is really a combination of loops and lists, two things we've already done. Really, all we're doing is taking those two separate concepts, smushing them together so we can use them both. What do I mean? Well, we're going to use a for loop to look through an index, either to print off the entire index or to find a particular word or letter, as you'll see as we go through this lesson. Well, let's start off with our first one here. Do this. The program traverses the fruits list to print off all of the different fruits. Add code to traverse and print out the vegetable list. If you come down here, you can see we have a fruits list, and it has apples, oranges, banana, peaches, and pears. We print off, here's the fruits I like to eat, and we have a little traverse code here. We're creating a brand new variable. Notice one has an S, this one doesn't. And essentially, we're going to create a loop that runs from index 0. Remember, indexes start at 0. And it's going to go for the length of the list. As long as these requirements aren't being fulfilled, we're going to add 1 to our counter. What we're going to do is we are going to make fruit, our new variable here, equal to our fruits list, but whatever the current index we are at in our for loop. And then we're just going to print off whatever that is right there. Rinse and repeat, kids. They really gave the code to us for down here up here. So all we really got to do is just take this code and move it down here. First thing we need to do, well, we need to create a new variable. I'm going to call mine veg. And our for loop is going to have a new variable. And I'm just going to call this one v for vegetable. And that one has to start off at 0. And as long as v is less than the vegetables, and this is the full one list, kids, we're going to add 1 to our counter. Inside that, we are going to set our veg equal to whatever the vegetables list is at. And how are we going to do that? Well, we're just going to point to whatever the index is right there. Well then, kids, we're going to print that off. So console.log. And this one, what are we printing off? Well, we want to print off whatever the veg variable is. So make sure you're putting veg in there. Hopefully when I hit run, I should get apples, oranges, bananas, peaches, and pears, and carrots, onions, celery, and broccoli. Well, let's see if I'm right. As you see, here's the fruits I like and my list, and the vegetables I like and my list there, kids. I think that's all code.org wants. Let's double check. Nope. Let's move on. Do this. The program prints every element in the list and also numbers them. Add code to print a numbered list of every element in the list of colors. What we have here is we have a variable, favorite pets, dogs, cats, parrots, guinea pigs, and iguanas. Who likes lizards, kids? We have a console.log statement. Here's a list of my favorite pets. We have our loop. We're creating a new variable, pets. And we're going to count through the list here. We're going to start at 0. We're going to go all the way through the list. As long as either of these aren't getting met, we're adding 1 to our index. And here, kids, we're printing off whatever the index is, a +1. And then we have a space, and then the pet. So right now, it looks like it'll print off the number +1, and then the pet. Here's my favorite color list, and it looks like what we have to do, kids, is add our colors to print off there. So let's hit run and just see. And you can see here's my list of favorite pets, and it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Or no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kids. And then the color's nothing. So this one is printing off not only our index or number we're at plus 1, because remember, kids, we index starting at 0, but we count starting at 1. And then we're also calling our new variable pet. Doesn't sound too hard, kids. What are we going to have to do? Well, we're going to have to make another variable here. And I'm just going to call this color. We're going to have to create our for loop as always, kids. And our variable C is going to be set to 0. And as long as C is less than my favorite colors.length, we are going to add 1 to our color list. After that, we have to set our new variable equal to our old variable, so we know what we're talking about here, kids. So we have our colors are set to favorite colors, but kids, not just our colors, we want it whatever the specific index we're at in our list. We have to put our C there. Now, the next thing we have to do, kids, is we're going to do the same console.log statement as above. And on this one, we are going to do C plus 1. And then we're going to go over, oops, I want to make sure we're in there, plus, because we're concatenating. This is just giving me my spaces, kids, when I print it off. And then we're going to print off what color, our variable there, like that. Looks like we have a spelling error here, kids. Favorite colors. That looks a little better there. Now we should get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 when we print this off. Let's see, kids. Reset run. Favorite pets list. Favorite colors list. So that's all we had to do. Again, pretty much taking the same code there and just assigning new variables for our new list. Well, let's move on to the next one, kids. Do this, the program traverses 2 parallel lists to print the price of each piece of fruit. There are 2 other parallel lists of students and what grade they're in. So we're running 2 lists here, kids. Read the code and run it to see how it works. Add code to the program to print the name and grade of the 5 students. This is what we're trying to print here, kids. Taking a look at our code, looks like we have fruits, apples, bananas, peaches, pears, and oranges. We have prices. And then we have 2 different variables here. And it looks like we're progressing through the list. We're reusing our I, or iterative number there, or index, whatever you want to call it, kids. And then we're printing off fruit variable, then the word cost, because it's in parentheses, and then the price, kids. This doesn't sound too hard. They started some code for us here. We have our students and grades, just like our 2 parts up there. And we can just do the same thing they did. Instead of students, we can just make it student. And we can, instead of grades, just make it grade. You can make whatever you want, kids. After that, we're just going to progress through our list like we have been. So we're going to make a variable. And for this one, I'm going to use the letter S for school. I know it kind of sounds like student, but for me, in my head and how things work, it works for me, kids. And ultimately, you just need to find what works for you. This one, we're going to start at 0 as long as S is less than the, and we could pick either of these lists because they should have the same number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We could do the students.length here, kids, if we wanted to. And as long as we're less than that, we're just going to do S plus plus. Now, kids, this is probably the trickiest part, but all we need to do is just figure out what index each one of these variables are and print it. We're going to do the same thing as we did before. Student is going to equal students, spelled right though, kids, but at whatever index we're at. And that's student. The next we need to do grade. Grade equal grades. And then whatever index we're at that particular moment. And then we just want to print off console.log. And the same thing as before. We just want to do student plus, well, we just want to do student and grade, if I'm right, kids. Is it? Nope, is in grade. So we have to do this is in grade like that. And then we're going to concatenate that with grade and a semicolon. That should be it, kids. So when I run here, I should get this list down here. Let's see if I'm right. Well, as you can see up here, we got our cost of all of our stuff down there. And then we come down here, we have our Angelo is in. And it looks almost exactly like this. I used a colon there, kids. It's up to you if you want to use that. But we did progress through the list for the name and the grade they're in, and we got to print it off on both of them. Pretty neat if you ask me, kids. Well, I think that's all code.org wanted for this one. Let's move on. We have a do this. The program filters a list of animals to only take the animals with more than 5 letters in their name. Add code to filter the list of students to those with names with 6 or more letters. Ooh. And you can see 6 or more letters, we should get something that prints off similar to this. If you come down here, kids, really what we're doing here is we're going to add an if statement. And basically we're going to say, hey, if the animal length is greater than 6 or 6 letters, then we're going to append a new item here. And we'll have to make a new one. It looks like it's already made there. How this one works is just like the other one. We have 2 different variables here. One is the filtered name and the other is just a regular animal. Basically what we're doing is we're creating another for loop that's going to look through each one of the indexes through the animals list up here. We have an if statement, and if something in the animal list, and we're just sending animal to the animal list on whatever index we're at, if something is greater than 5 kids, well, then we are going to add that to the filtered items list. And then we're going to print off the animal filtered list there. That's really not too bad. I think we can handle it. If we go down here, we've already been given our variable right there. And we have our 2 extra variables, the filtered students and the regular students. So all we really need to do, kids, is really just recreate this for and if loop. Well, let's start off with our for loop, right? So for, and we're going to do the variable s. S is for school kids. As long as s is 0, we're going to go through the list. And s, we can go through the list as long as s is less than the student's list length. As long as that is true, we're just going to progress through our list. Now on this one, kids, don't forget we have to figure out what spot on the index we're at. So this one is going to be student is going to be equal to students, but whatever the current index is at. Now we're going to do our if statement, and this is just if student.length, so the length of that is greater than or equal to, because we want 6 or above, right, kids? We are going to append an item. What list are we going to append? Let's go to append item here. And this is going to be our students filtered list. And what do we want to add? Well, items off of our student list right there. We add a little semicolon. Ooh, that's not spelled right, kids. Filtered list. Like that. We are one little curly bracket away, and I think that is it, kids. Then we're just going to print off whatever the student filtered list is. Well, let's see if I'm right. Well, we have our list here. It doesn't look like we populated our list. Let's take a look at our code here, kids. Let's reset it. Kids, I noticed I had a little spelling error here, ENGTH. Make sure that's right. Let's run now. And there's our list. So that one was just looking for a length that didn't exist. That's why it didn't print it off. But here you go. We have one with more than 6 letters, and you can see it prints those off. So again, all we did was just look for a length that is less than a specified number. We went through each of our indexes. When we found one that was, we created a new variable to store that, and then we printed that off. Pretty awesome, kids. I think that's all code.org wants. Let's move on. This program traverses a list of prices to find the minimum price. Add code to traverse the list to find the maximum price. Well, kids, this is almost exactly like what we did in the last lesson. Instead of looking for a minimum number, we're just going to be looking for a min or max on whatever list we're in. Let's go ahead and take a look at our code. We have our variable prices, and we have a bunch of prices in here. We are setting up 2 new variables, and min price is equal to the price at position 0. So this is just setting up min price to be price at 0. If we come down here, we're going to progress through our list up here. And price is going to equal whatever price is at that particular index. And if price is less than the minimum price we've already established, then we're just going to make the new min price that price there. Basically, what we're doing is we're coming up and just comparing 2 values, kids. Whatever the smallest one is getting stored. This is a type of sort, kids. Maybe in class we'll talk a little more about that. What we have to do is pretty much the same thing down here. So again, we're just going to be comparing a list to see what the maximum is. So in this case, basically, we're going to make a max price and we're going to flip this. If price is greater than max price, well, that's going to be the new price we're going to do. We're going to add our code down here, and we already got our variable counters, and all we're really going to do is we're going to do price is going to equal price at whatever current index we're in, and we're reusing our variables here, kids. That's fine. And price is going to equal that, and if a price is greater than max price, well, kids, max price is going to become the new price. Now when I go print this off, I should get the minimum number, and just scanning through this, it should be 50, and the maximum looks like 325, kids. So I should get min price 50, max price 325. Let's see if I'm right. Uh-oh. We got an error here. Kids, remember it's price is. Double check your spelling. And now minimum price, that's 0.50, and a maximum of 325. So all we're doing is just comparing the index price to the next one. If it is smaller, it's storing it. If not, it's moving on to the next one. Just like us, moving on to the next lesson, kids. Do this. This program imports data from the states table and filters it. The top part filters to get only the states that have been added to the United States since the year 1900. Update the program to print a list of states that have a population of less than 1 million. Use the code that filters the states by their admission date as an example. Kids, this one's going to be a little different because we're pulling in some outside information that you are not seeing right now. If we look, we have two variables here, state list and year list, and it's getting the column. We're getting information from an outside source. And these two parameters here are the U.S. state and the name. And then the column is going to be the U.S. state and emission date. So we should have two columns, the state and the state name, state and the year. So think of that as we go along. Kids, other than that, everything we're going to do is going to be the same. We're creating a new variable since we're only looking for things after 1900. We're making a variable since 1900 list. Nice name. This is going to be our filtering, and we're just going to make another variable, state and year. And we're going to progress through each one of these states on our list. And state is going to be whatever the state current index is, and the year is going to be whatever year we are in the index. And if the year is greater than 1900, well, we're going to append this list up here to add that state. We come down here, we print off that states added since 1900, and then we have the variable right there. Not too bad, kids. I think we can do this no problem. And if you come down here, we have our variable population list, and that's getting our population, the state, and the population. We're creating another list here, state population list. It is currently empty right now. We're creating another variable, population, and you can see that we're going to progress through each one of the list here. And we're going to go through each state, and whatever state we're on, we're going to set the population to the population list. Well, kids, that's the for loop for us. We really just got to do the if loop. And really the if loop here is just those part. We're not looking for the year 1900. We're looking for the number 1 million. So basically we're going to add this if statement and append the list down here. And that's really it, kids. That means if, and we have a variable to count this, population. If that is less than, kids, I know I'm going to get this wrong, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I think that's 1 million. If we are at 1 million, kids, we are going to append item here, and we're going to do the small population list up there. And what are we going to add to it? Well, whatever the variable state was right there. Semicolon, one little bracket there. Looks like we have a little there. I think on this one we can't use commas, kids, if I'm right. I think commas were just helping me. There we go. That should be 1 million. We'll see here in a second. And if it is less than 1 million, we should just print that off. Well, let's see what we get here, kids. States with fewer than 1 million people, Alaska, Delaware, North and South Dakota. Kids, I'm convinced these states don't exist. I've never met anybody from either of them. Vermont and Wyoming. And then we have our list there of all of the states as well. Again, all we did was we're just comparing each one's date with a predetermined date and then appending a new variable list. I think we're going to take this one step further with our last question. Let's move on to it, kids. We have a do this. This app has users add their grades and then we'll calculate their average grade. Read and run the code to understand how it works. Add the code to the program to calculate the average of the grades when the user clicks the button. Test your program on a few different numbers to make sure it works. Woo! Let's take a look at our code here. Looks like we have a variable grade list. That's going to be something we're going to add to because it's empty right now. On the event, they hit the add button which is the button right here, we are going to create a new variable, new grade, and it's going to get the number from the grade input, which is here. So we're just getting whatever the user adds there, and storing it is new grade. Then whatever we get from the user, we're going to add to this grades list here by the new grade variable we created. Then we're going to update the screen, kids. And our update screen is this function down here. Next, we have on event average grade button is clicked. Something has to happen. So we have to add code down here to make sure. And kids, we're going to have to do this in a couple different ways. We're going to have to store some information. So we're going to have to go through the loops, and we're going to have to get some pieces here. And we're going to have to store them. And then we're going to have to get the average. And what's the average? Well, that is the sum divided by the count, or the number of grades. That means we're going to have a variable for the sum. We're probably going to have a variable for the count. And we're going to have a variable for the average as well. Woo! That sounds crazy, kids, but I don't think it's too bad. Let's go and make our variables first. We have our variable sum. We're going to set that equal to 0. We have our variable count. That's how many times or how many grades we have. Set that to 0. And we're going to have an average 2. And we're going to have to set that to 0. And we're doing that inside our event, because that's where we want this information, right? We are going to have to figure out what the sum is. So basically, we're going to go to whatever our list is here, and we want to add numbers to it, right? So if our sum is 5, and we have 5 and 5 up there, we want to add 5 to that list. So we want the sum to be the total of whatever we're doing, right? First thing I need to do is progress through the list. So I'm going to do I'm going to do 4, and this one's going to be our variable. We can just do I for iterations, and we're going to set that to 0. As long as I is less than the grades list length, like that, we're going to add to our counter. And like I said before, what do we want? Well, we want the sum to be equal to our current sum plus whatever we add to our grades list, right, kids? So we have grades list, and whatever that index is, we want to add to our sum. And after that, we also want to add to our count. So every time we want to go through this, we're updating those two numbers. That means every time I add a grade in, let's say I got a 90, we'd add 90 to the sum, but we also have to add that to the count. So we have to keep track of both of those. Well, kids, after that, we're going to get out of this loop here. And I forgot to enter it up here. And after that, we need to take care of our average, right? So let's go our average. And our average is going to be what? It's just going to be our sum divided by count. And after that, I just want to set the text or print it off. We're not going to do a console.log here. We're going to go over to this average grades label to get the average grade. So I want to set the text, and that's going to be to the average grade label, because that's what I want it to print off to. And what do I want it to say? Well, I want it to say your average grade is, and then we just want to concatenate our average variable there. We have our little semicolons to close everything out, and that looks pretty good. Now when I hit run, I should be able to store my new grades, and as I store them, my sum should be adding up, and we're also adding to the count, so I can just divide the two to get an average. Well, let's see if I'm right. Our first grade, let's add a 90, should pop up there. maybe 100 there. Let's do a 25. Ooh, kids, grade sank there. Maybe an 80. That stored all of these. Now, it should have added them up as I went along. When I go to calculate, we should get all of these added up and then divided by 4. And you see we got a 73.5. If I take out my calculator here, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, 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 you can see that it's the same exact thing. So our code worked out. So there's just a neat little way we can use both of our for loop and our lists to do some pretty neat things. Kids, hopefully you found this video helpful. When we move on to our make, I am sure you're going to use a lot of these concepts. As always, kids, if you're a little confused, feel free to come talk to me. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next video. See you later, kids. Bye, bye, bye.